Hello and welcome to the Game Line, Wales Online's daily rugby debate show. I'm Ben James. I'm joined by Andy Howe and Simon Thomas to look through Wales's team announcement. They've named their team to face Scotland, but it's slightly overshadowed today, isn't it? It's an interesting day. Obviously, new stories breaking as they develop. So let's get into it. They've named the team. What do we make of the team?
It was funny. I was writing the team story and I was trying to think how to phrase it because. Do you write will make his test debut? Because we just don't know at the moment. So the way I wrote it is has been selected, and the man who's been selected to make his test debut is WillGriff John. Congratulations to him. It's a fascinating story. He born in Plymouth, grew up and raised in the Rhondda, played for Wales in the 20s, well on the books of Cardiff Blues, then went to New Zealand to try his hand over there, a couple of years there, went to Doncaster in the second flight of English rugby. He's worked his way back up through Sale, and at 27 years old, here comes his cap. So, hats off to him. He's done it the long, hard way round. And you just wonder, though, whether he might fall into the category of the likes of Roger Bidgood, who remember back in our day, who was chosen to play for Wales, and that game was called off. I think it was bad weather at the time. Had to wait a couple more years for his actual debut, because the point is, we just don't know at this stage whether Wales-Scotland's going to head on, do we?
No, we don't, because of coronavirus, and there's a government meeting today, so things could happen. But I think we've got to talk about it here today as though the match is going ahead. Yeah. So you look at the selection, WillGriff John, he's come in. Really, Wales had to bring him in because, as we previously discussed, the fault line is the scrum. The scrum needs stabilising. It's cost Wales so much in this tournament because it is, helps the opposition either relieve pressure or put pressure on you through the scrum. So WillGriff John, if he comes in and he only anchors the scrum, as long as it's a firm anchor, we shouldn't be too worried about what he does round the park. Though Clyde Griffiths, who coached him at Doncaster, says he is good round the park and he's a good footballer. He's got good hands. So big chance for WillGriff John. I'm pleased to see him in the side.
I think the disadvantage WillGriff probably found himself up against, he's coming into the Wales squad, and we know that certainly in the Gatton era, and there's a residue of that, there's been very high levels of conditioning demanded of players, and the difficulty for him is he's been contrasted to Dylan Lewis and Leon Brown, who are very much like modern day mobile props. There were stats out just last weekend about the number of rucks that Dylan Lewis hits, so they are players with very high levels of conditioning. WillGriff John, week in, week out in the Premiership, he's not unfit. It's just that perhaps by the barometer of the players elsewhere in the squad, he maybe had a little ground to make up. But he's had a number of sessions with Wales now.
But the first thing is his prop.
Oh, I know. I know.
Look at South Africa's props in the World Cup. They're not exactly the most mobile in the world, but they won in the World Cup.
But I think it's fair to say Wales have placed great store by it, haven't they, by conditioning levels?
Yes, they have, but maybe they've got it wrong. Maybe they have forgot the fundamentals about the foundations of the game, which remain in the scrum and the line-up.
The thing that strikes me, Ben, about this team is that it's kind of symbolic of what's been happening in the few weeks. You've got three players who started against England have now. There may be injury issues which haven't been in the press release, but we have to work on what we've been told. And there's three players who started against England are now out of the 23 altogether. Dylan Lewis, the loosehead Rob Evans, and also in the scrum half situation Thomas Williams. Now the musical chairs have been nowhere more evident than the scrum half. We've had one starting, then going out altogether, another one starting. So now we've got the third different starter of the championship. What's going on at scrum half?
All three of them are in different positions to where they were last week, because Webb was on the bench, now he's starting. Gareth Davis wasn't in the squad, he's on the bench, and Thomas Williams has gone from starting to out with it.
Yeah, no, we've almost lost track of it all. You're in, you're out, you're in, you're out.
Okie
dokie. Okay, Webb definitely deserves a chance, because I thought he was excellent off the bench against England last week, and the other two scrum halves really haven't nailed down the spot, and I don't think they're playing as well as they did at the World Cup, disappointingly, and let's hope they get back to their best form. But it does concern me, the lack of consistency in selection, because Wales haven't been, apart from perhaps in Ireland, they haven't really, on the scoreline, they haven't been heavily beaten. So consistency selection, what sort of message does that send out to players? 1 week you're in at 23, then you're out. Yeah. So, to me, players must be wondering what's happening.
And the Rob Evans one, it's weird because we talked last week about Rob gradually having worked his way up back the pecking order, then plays against England. Now he's not involved at all. I mean, I'm guessing the man who's come in to start obviously is Wyn Jones, who returns. Now we did know that Wyn had a hip flexor muscle problem, and which was impacting upon his training. So maybe you have to say there that perhaps he would have still started in the last game. This is the lack of, but it's the fact that people start and then bombed out altogether.
Is it maybe the case that they see Rhys Carry as
more of an impact? Yeah,
and maybe they trust trusted Rob Evans to start at Twickenham more than Rhys Carey when Jones went down.
That's probably the case, I would suggest. The other issue, of course, is Wales to me. Corey Hill's in a team, how highly I rate Corey Hill as a lot forward. However, he lacks match fitness, and Wales throughout this championship have started with players who lack match fitness, and they're doing it again with Hill. Well, Hill's came off the bench against Italy, but really he's hardly played for the 13 months since he got injured against England.
It's Corey Hill's first start for Wales since the England game, February 2019. Interestingly enough, it's also Rhys Webb's first start for Wales since November 2017. There's obviously been the ineligibility issue while he was with Toulon, just kept him out. So, and then WillGriff John's first start. So it's quite landmark for a game for a number of players. Also for Alan Wynne-Jones, who becomes the joint most capped player of all time alongside Richie McCaw. Hats off to him, an incredible achievement. So it's interesting when you look at this team, and I mean the Corey Hill one is obviously been impacted to a degree by injury because Jake Ball is obviously unfortunately facing a long layoff now. I mean, you've got actually quite a nice balance there. I always thought with Hill and Alan Wynne-Jones and the back five. The big issue again is really whether this new front row can bring some more solidity in the scrum, which has been a continuing topic.
Yeah, Scotland are bound to go after the scrum as well. They've announced their team today. I think they made, is it just one change?
Well, Rory Sutherland has been one of the big finds of the season for Scotland. He had almost like a month in a wheelchair after a really serious leg injury, a serious groin injury, I think it was, and his career seemed questionable whether he was going to go ahead, and he's come back and he's been one of the best players in the championship for me, Rory Sutherland, and scrimmaging has been good. So and so obviously WillGriff John has been brought in to try and counter him.
Okay, let's look at a few comments. So Michael Hart-Jones says, again, dropping a 9. Why? It's crazy. If we don't win this one, I think people are going to start calling for change. I presume it doesn't mean change of 9, because I think we've had enough of those. Simon James, why have we not given Lewis Rees-Zammit a run out? We have nothing to lose. And also on that point, Gary Stevens, wasn't this tournament all about rotation and finding out who is the best player in each position going forward? Let's take the first of those then. Lewis Rees-Zammit, not in the 23 once again, not going to feature for Wales in the Six Nations. Is that a missed opportunity?
It was a missed opportunity against Italy, because I felt he should have played that match, and this could be his 5th cap by now if he played as well for Wales as he had for Gloucester. He's been one of the Stars, one of the best finishers in Gallagher Premiership this season. Looking at their selections, or the Welsh selections during the Six Nations, I didn't expect him to start, and I'm not surprised he's not on the bench. Because I don't know why, but they seem to why they're not picking him really. Is it an age thing, or do they think he's not ready yet? But what I've seen of him playing for Gloucester in the Champions Cup, Gallagher Premiership, I think he's ready. He's a lethal finisher.
I'd have had him on the bench at least this weekend. I mean, Johnny McNicholas has had opportunities. You've seen what he can do, and you've seen the issues he had defensively. You've seen that. I don't think you're going to lose anything particularly by him not being involved this weekend. I would have had Rees-Zammit on the bench and looked to bring him on to give him a taste of international rugby.
I would have started with him, and I would have put Liam Williams at fullback and left Halfpenny out.
And onto that point from Gary Stevens, wasn't this tournament all about rotation and finding out who was the best player in each position going forwards? Now it's the Six Nations. That's never the case, is it?
No.
But is Pivac in a slightly tricky position, given everyone talks about the amount of experience in the squad, 850 odd caps in the starting 15s? Does that almost make it harder, because there's a lot of experience, but a lot of these boys aren't at sort of the age you'd expect to be put out to pasture? So a lot of players there are ingrained in the Gatland way, and they're not really old enough to be moved on yet, and you find yourself in a halfway house, which I think is where Pivac's largely found himself in this tournament. Yeah,
I think so. He has to some degree. But the disappointing thing about it is, to me, all the foundations were there and everything, and Wales have underperformed, underachieved this championship. But I would say Owen Watkin not involved again. This classic guy played World Cup quarter final. He should be involved in this game, surely. Adley Parks, we know everything he can do. He's 33. He's probably not going to be around for the next World Cup. We might have been looking at a World Cup partnership in Tompkins and Owen Watkin. So give people like him a go. You look at the pack, difficult to make. When you look at their age profile there, that pack probably selected only one. They could have, on age grounds, they could have perhaps changed, would be Ken Owens. I assume they obviously pick Alan Wynne because he's captain. Ken Owens, hooker, and looking towards the future. But you've got to go in against Scotland with a strong spine, really. So I'm not surprised at the selection.
The thing is, you would hope by your final game of the Six Nations, especially the first campaign for a new coach, you pretty much by the end of that finalise what your strongest team is, what your preferred team is. Unfortunately, we've reached the final game of the Six Nations, and you still can't see real absolute clarity that they've reached that. They're still going through, clearly, a period of uncertainty to me.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to describe it. It's a confusing picture, really. A bit like coronavirus. It's confusing.
How much of this is affected by the sheer amount of injuries that, to sort of key players who you'd expect to form a big part of Pivac going forward? People like Gareth Anscombe are out. There's other sort of players
Jonathan Davis.
Exactly, Jonathan Davis. So you then fall into that thing where you sort of, it's damage limitations, and you want to stick to maybe you don't want to stray too far in the sense that Six Nations as a tournament can get away from you very quickly, as we've seen.
Well, the injury to Jonathan Davis, ironically, is one thing that has actually led to the big find of the championship,
Indeed, yeah.
which is Nick Tompkins. I think we can all agree on that. He's been the biggest plus. He's had one iffy outing in Ireland. Aside from that, he's been a massive positive for me. Just the way he created and carved out that try, one of the tries of the championship for Justin Tipperick, just his first instinct when he took that kick off was to test the opposition. Just showed everything about him there with quick feet, awareness, great hands, massive plus. To be honest, there aren't that many real frontliners missing out there.
No, you're right. You can say damage limitation, but there's not much difference to the World Cup, is it? Because Jonathan Davis played most of that World Cup on one leg. Anscombe missed it anyway. You could argue, Wales should be strengthened really by Faletau being available and in the squad. So I don't think it's
actually stronger, isn't it?
Yeah, this is has been this tournament. They've had most of the players available who won the Six Nations Championship with the Grand Slam last season and got to the semi-finals of the World Cup. Yet, unfortunately, for some reason which we're struggling to explain, Wales have gone backwards this campaign.
But I suppose, speaking of Sean Holley on Wednesday about this, and stuff like the defence, it doesn't take many minor changes. Like Byron Hood probably hasn't set out to change all that much, but given how long they've been ingrained in that system, even if it's a slight change,
well, I mean,
it can create mass confusion.
It is quite a change. I mean, essentially, they seem to be moving away from the blitz to more of the drift, don't they? That is, and I know there only are really the two formats, but it's still a fairly seismic change when you've had 12 years of the up and out from 13, and it's clearly with the teething problems, because once again in the England game we saw the situation where Wales have got narrow in defence for Elliot Daly's try. And the bottom line is really
one though, because England has sucked them in because Ben Young's got behind them already.
Well, the only thing, if you look at that, there was only one break from Ben Young's, then one more carry I think from the hooker Jamie George, one more ruck, and all of a sudden they got an overlap. It seemed to me against the old Wales, you had to work a lot harder than that to get an overlap.
But one an All Blacks type try, simplicity itself, and they didn't suffer from white line fever in England.
I just feel that at the moment we are being a lot easier to score against than perhaps we become used to.
Yeah, that could be. And do you know what? A lot of it comes out with defence. At the end of the day, defence comes down to mindset, doesn't it? Yeah. Either you want to tackle or you don't. As simple as that. Now, I'm not saying the Wales players definitely do want to tackle, so I'm not saying that, but that mindset was driven by Sean Edwards' personality.
Well, we saw Wales blitz a little bit more on Saturday, which hasn't been the case throughout the tournament. So it feels like if you stop, if England went wide and got to the touchline, Wales were being given licence to blitz. But the problem is, if you're getting, broken down centrally, if you're working off quick ball in a central position, it's hard to do anything other than push out from the ruck and drift. You can't really blitz then if you are, working off.
The thing is well, they're going to come up against a team whose great strength is playing with width. They're back three when Hogg is playing as he can with that run where he'll drift on an arcing run. You saw the effectiveness, 2 tries for Sean Maitland. Well, I know they were up against 14 men for kind of half that game, but they're still a very effective and fluid ball handling side with a lot of good quality. The centres partnership seems to have, Johnson's come in, he's done well, Hastings has done well, and they have got attacking threat. They're going to look to play rugby, and they will look to play with width, with Hamish Watson crashing through like a rolling rubber ball like he always does against Wales. It's going to be a big test this weekend.
If this match was taking place at Murrayfield, Scotland would be the favourites. Simple as. But Wales have got home advantage. Big match for Wales, so they've got to finish on a high. with the defence playing on a blitz thing, unless everybody's on point and blitzing at the same time, then the blitz can be undone. You only need someone, need someone to get it wrong, leave that gap, and if someone goes through in the middle, unless you've got loads of pace in your team, it's hard to get back on a turn.
Do you reckon that's a conscious decision? Obviously, with a blitz, you communicate from the outside, don't you? Which normally is Jonathan Davis's job. Jonathan Davis isn't there. Nick Tompkins is coming from a different defensive setup. Is it maybe a conscious decision to either maybe pass communication inside and work off a more of a drift defence?
Maybe it's just the style they're employing. Of Wales, the question I'd ask, and maybe Simon can answer this, were Wales been found out defensively, not just now, but actually just before the World Cup and during the World Cup to some degree?
I think it would have been very informative and useful to have been able to have had Byron Hayward up for press this week, because I think there's a lot of questions that people quite legitimately would like to ask, just trying to get into understanding exactly what the mindset is defensively, and we haven't had that opportunity, and I guess at the press conference today there'll be questions about it again. But it's clear, whatever way you look at it, the defence is a work in progress.
Yeah, but a lot of those defence issues come from the issues elsewhere, don't it? Like starting with the scrum.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering, actually. Obviously, people talk about Sean Edwards being with France and the instant impact he's had, but France did a number on us in the World Cup employing our defensive style, and Sean Edwards told Gauthier as much before the tournament.
And France were found out defensively against Scotland last weekend. They conceded some soft tries, and Sean will be questioning the appetite of some of those players to tackle him.
I suppose the thing we've got to address again, really, towards the end of this, is the likelihood of this game going ahead. Just to sort of let people know exactly how things can move on. So by the time some people maybe see this recording, it'll have moved on again. But I've spoken to the Welsh Rugby Union top brass today, and as things stand, the Wales-Scotland game at Cardiff on Saturday is still on. Now, the union, I think, would I get the impression, will be obviously be guided by government advice. We know there's a Cobra meeting going on as we speak, Boris Johnson holding that, and we wait to see what the outcome will be. Suggestion seems to be that in Ireland, for example, now they've schools are going off, public meetings, and gatherings above 1,000 people indoors and 5,000 outdoors are being cancelled. Now, are the UK government and maybe the Welsh government going to go the same way? At the moment, we're not sure. So it's a difficult, because you put a tweet out saying, the Wales-Scotland game is going ahead, and you get a barrage of people saying it's appalling, it's disgraceful, what the W are you doing? But obviously, to a large degree, they have to base what they do on the government advice. Andy, do you think this game will go ahead on Saturday?
Well, I don't know. Simple, I don't know. I'm not qualified enough to talk about what's happening with the health issues and all. So it's one of those things. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I'm not blaming the Welsh Rugby Union. This game is due to take place on Saturday, and if the advice is it can go ahead, I think the game should be still should be staged.
What I've noticed is there's been a change of the mood in the public. I think at the start of the week there were a lot of people saying it's a bit of an overreaction to cancel it. I think as cases increase and you read about the terrible situation in Italy where their health service is being so stretched, and you've seen the footage from Cheltenham, thousands of people there, I think the mood has changed, and more people are saying, it's not worth doing it. The difficult thing for the union is if today's meeting from the government comes out and it doesn't categorically say mass gatherings should not go ahead, then the ball is in the union's court, in the Six Nations court. And the trouble is, you might well have a situation where the Premier League decides to go behind closed doors, because they kind of have to in a way, because they can't reschedule. They've only got now. You can reschedule one rugby match. If it's left to the union and the Six Nations, they face a very difficult decision, because at the moment they're kind of the last game standing, the last mass gathering. It's a really difficult one.
It's mass gatherings at Charlton Racecourse, mind.
Well, I think that the reaction to that has been very negative, and I think you can sometimes sense the momentum and a drip of public reaction.
The issue is, with Italy, it was on our doorstep, but it's not on our doorstep any longer. It's sure, and people are seeing what's happening in Italy. It's what hour and a half flight away. People are seeing, and the struggles that their health service is at, which is one of the best in the world, is having to cope with it.
I think with Ireland having done what they've done, it'll be fascinating now today to see whether the British government decides to do, the UK government decides to do something similar. Obviously, the Welsh Health Service is run by the Assembly, so they have a big say in the matter as well. But there's a balancing act. You've seen the reactions today. On the one hand, cancellation, you can argue it makes sense in terms of health provision, in terms of containment, and then the other side of it, you have the impact, if you do have the cancellations, what impact does that have economically and socially, and the reaction from people? It's a really difficult one.
I mean, all these football matches, etc., it's going to come. It's just a question of when it's going to come, because what they're trying to do is obviously delay the full onset of the virus. But of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing of all is the health of the population.
Indeed it is. And this is something that's going to develop throughout the day. You can catch all the latest developments on Wales Online. That's it for today's Gain Line. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow.